Noah Strang from the Strang Stack joined me on today's episode, and we're going to talk silly season. Let's readdress the drama happening in Vancouver, and could we see the Hughes trio play on the same team at some point? Look, I know Luke Hughes still hasn't signed an extension at the time of this recording, but he's going to be a Devil. Just relax. It's not a matter if, it's a matter of when. So there's a lot to break down on today's episode of Locked On Devils alongside Noah. Buckle up, everybody.
You're Locked On Devils, your daily podcast on the New Jersey Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, this is Bryce Salvador, and you're Locked On Devils with Trey Matthews.
Elliott scores! Oh, Stevens stepped up, nailed him. Brodor's got the puck. What a shot. The Devils win the Stanley Cup.
Alrighty now, what is up, New Jersey? Welcome back to the Locked On Devils podcast here at the Locked On Network. I'm your host, College Hockey Play Announcer, Devils Wire Pucks Pitchforks, and also part-time credential media member, Trey Matthews. There's been a lot of drama in Vancouver. A few months ago, I talked about the matter with a lot of people, including my colleagues over at Locked On Canucks. I felt as though now is an appropriate time to bring it back up because we've been talking a lot about Luke Hughes and his contract and what it's going to look like and when the Devils are going to extend him. But there's still a lot of question marks surrounding his older brother, Quinn. Will the Hughes trio reunite at some point? Joining me on today's episode is a man who covers the Canucks for the Strang Stack, and he's also a member of the PHWA. It is Noah Strang. Noah, thank you for taking the time to do this. And first and foremost, how you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for having me on, Trey. I really appreciate inviting the chance to talk some hockey and talk about the Hughes brothers.
Well, once again, thank you for taking the time to do this. I guess let's start with this. My goodness, there seems to be a lot of drama in Vancouver. Let's go back to the beginning. It wasn't too long ago that the Canucks were a playoff team making it to the second round. A lot of people had big expectations, but it was like an episode of Keeping Up with Kardashians. It seemed like there was drama at every corner.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think last year went the way that anyone in Vancouver expected it to. Like you said, from the first day of the season, there's obstacles to overcome. There's tons of public storylines. Obviously, the Miller-Pettersson one kind of being the dominant dramatic storyline that took over not only the Canucks season, but a lot of the headlines across the NHL for a big chunk of the season. They also dealt with a ton of injuries, which didn't make things any easier. And the result was a very disappointing season. Like you said, the results 2 years ago, they made it to the second round of the playoffs. They took the Oilers to Game 7 in that second round series without, there's any of their top two goalies. There was the third stringer, Artur Shilovs, that really brought them there. I think that caused a lot of optimism, a lot of hope that this team was trending in the right direction. And last year was just a complete reversal. And so I guess now they're they took a step back to hopefully take another step forward. So we'll see how they do this year, but I'm expecting they'll probably fall somewhere in the middle.
Somewhere in the middle. Well, let's talk about Quinn Hughes. Before we talk about the drama surrounding him and your thoughts on the matter, I just got to get your opinion on Quinn and what your captain has meant to the organization and just basically giving you guys that sort of spotlight.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been lucky to cover the Canucks for the past couple of seasons, and maybe one of the biggest privileges of that has been able to watch Quinn Hughes on a nightly basis. He's incredibly talented. He's one of the best players to ever put on the Canucks jersey. And if he stays in Vancouver for his whole career, which I'm sure we're going to talk about in a second, I think there's no doubt that he'll probably finish his career as potentially the greatest Canuck of all time. I mean, he's already smashing through all the records for like points by defenseman a season and just breaking like almost all the Canucks franchise records, rewriting their record books. And he's an incredibly gifted player. I think there's no doubt that he's one of the two best defensemen in the NHL, and he's one of these modern defensemen that gives you so much in the offensive end. The Canucks looks like this past year a completely different team with Hughes on the ice compared to when he wasn't on the ice. And I think, he missed a lot of games, so it was hard for him to get into that top level of award consideration. But if he had kept that level of play up over an 82-game season, I think he would have definitely been a bigger contender for some of those awards.
Before we continue with today's discussion alongside Noah, let me tell you guys about Game Time. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with family or friends? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Game Time comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come join you. Game Time makes it possible. Game Time makes you buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch. And they've got incredible last minute deals, clear seat views, and the lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. Game Time is the official ticketing partner of Locked On NHL. Tired of endless scrolling, trying to find the best deal? Game Time Zone Deals pick the best seats in your section for you. Seat views right in the app before you buy, so you know exactly where you'll be. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Okay, let's get back to today's discussion alongside Noah. More silly season discussion coming at you. Take it away once again. Now, let's talk about the biggest discussion that I want to bring to your attention. I'm sure you're no stranger to it. During exit interviews, Jim Rutherford brought up that Quinn wants to play with his brothers at some point. Now, here's the problem with saying something like that so publicly, and he realized instantly his mistake. Like you could just see it in real time watching that press conference. He's like, I think I said too much. Look, I get that Quinn, Jack, Luke, all of them are close. Obviously, they're brothers. I'm sure it's every brother's dream or family member's dream to someday play with one another on the same team, not against each other. We love the Hughes Bowl. We love it when the Canucks play the Devils, but I'm sure they want to be on the same team. So before we get into the possibility of Quinn being shown the door or leaving in free agency when that time comes, what were your initial reactions when you saw the Jim Rutherford comments? Were you in attendance for that press conference?
I was in attendance for that press conference.
Okay, well, let me start with this then. Like, it seemed to be dead silent after he said those comments. What were your guys' reactions? Were you just like, did he just seriously say that?
Yeah, I think Rutherford spoke a few times over the end of the season there, and he had a couple comments that really stood out and caused a lot of headlines in Vancouver. Thing about the Vancouver market is it's very passionate, which is great. I mean, there's a lot of media coverage there, which is excellent. There's a lot of great voices and a lot of engaged fans. But one of the results of that is that if you say something like this, like if Jim Rutherford comes out with a comment like this, it's not going to be missed. It's going to be discussed by not only all the media members there, but by all the fans online too. And I think there was like a little bit of a level of shock at the time, especially just like with the way he worded it and the fact that this Hughes storyline right now for Vancouver is kind of the biggest thing hanging over the franchise for the next several months into a couple years. Yeah, I mean, I don't think Rutherford later kind of clarified that Hughes hasn't come to the management yet and said that he's going to be leaving in free agency or that he doesn't want to sign a contract in Vancouver. Like, that has not been made clear. And Rutherford also said that Hughes hasn't told him explicitly, that he wants to go to the Devils at any point in his career. Whether Rutherford made that comment because he's getting those implied feelings is unknown, but I think a lot of Canucks fans will be quick to point out that there's more and more opportunities now for players to play together that aren't necessarily on the same team in the NHL. I mean, even this past spring, we had the Four Nations. Jack was on the team, and Quinn would have been on the team if he was healthy. And I know that there's a lot of disappointment from both Jack and Quinn to not play together in that scenario. We have the Olympics coming up next year. I'm sure Jack will make the team. I'm sure Quinn will make the team. I'm sure Luke will be up there as a top contender. So I think Canucks fans will be quick to point out that there's other opportunities potentially. But yeah, it was a shocking thing to hear at the time, and it was something that causes a lot of concern in the Vancouver market.
So here's why people in the Vancouver market might be concerned, because Quinn has 2 years remaining on his deal. He's being paid annually $7.85 million, and he has no clauses attached to his deal. He doesn't have like a no trade clause, a no movement clause, not even modified. He could theoretically, just hypothetically, he could be dealt at any given point. And now this seems like this year is going to be like make or break.
100%, 100%. You know, I think the Canucks need to prove to Quinn that this is somewhere that's worth staying, a team that has a chance at making a playoff run. I mean, the Devils are obviously a very young, exciting team. Canucks need to prove to Quinn that, you know, there's enough reasons here to stay in the long term. And so this year does become extremely important. And if Quinn ever does go to Canucks management and make it clear that he doesn't want to sign in Vancouver long term, then the question immediately has to become, how can you get the most value for him? Because he's such a special player, such an incredible player that like losing him in free agency would be extremely devastating. And so it's going to come down to Quinn, obviously his desires. He's going to have to make a choice at some point, but all the Canucks can do for now really is try to make Vancouver as desirable as possible. And, you know, I think they kind of started with that. We saw it this summer. I think they made some progress. They signed or re-signed Garland, Demko, and Besser. Those are all three players that are close with Quinn. They're friends. They've been in Vancouver for a while. And there was thoughts that maybe kind of like this core would start to crumble and maybe that would make Vancouver less attractive for Hughes. But I think seeing some of these players be retained potentially makes Vancouver a little bit more attractive. But at the end of the day, they're going to have to win more games than they did last year and be more competitive than they were last year.
Do you think with those comments made, does that scare away some teams? Like, let's just say, worst case scenario, the Canucks are going to have to make a difficult decision. Let's just say halfway through the year, it's not really going all that well. Quinn will now only have half a season and another year left on his deal. Does that put pressure on the front office to maybe get the best out of him? But at the same time, maybe some teams will like shy away just because it's like, well, you made those comments. You can't go back on your word that he wants to play with his brother. So why would I trade you all these sort of assets or these draft picks or these high-end prospects when in reality, I'm just getting a rental?
Yeah, I would think so. You know, if you're not the Devils and you're making a trade for Quinn Hughes, you'd want to have some kind of assurance that he's going to be willing to sign there long term. I don't think any team would swing a big trade for Hughes without like the assurance that he's going to stick around, because the asking price will be high, and there obviously is this external factor of the fact that both of his brothers play for the Devils. So I do think there will be teams. I mean, they're at least going to exercise a increased level of caution in any Hughes trade, even considering how good he is. But you know, the fact is that he's one of the best players in the league on one of the best contracts in the league right now. So there's going to be teams lining up to get him left and right. I'm sure it's just about having a different level of care when making that trade.
Now, let me ask you this. Do you think Quinn will be traded either this year or next year? Is that a possibility?
I mean, it's so hard for me to say. I have no insider info in this conversation. If you had asked me 3 months ago, and again, it's just my personal belief, I probably would have said yes. I think we'll see Hughes traded at some point, probably not this season, but maybe afterwards. But over the past couple of months, I think there's been a few developments that have me reconsidering a bit. The first being the Canucks kind of re-signing some of those players. I don't think it's a massive factor, but I do think it weighs into anyone's decision. And the second, kind of a bigger one that I'm following pretty closely, I think a lot of people in Vancouver are now, is the new CBA that's coming into place. So the new CBA obviously is changing some of the rules, and one of the rules is the max contracts are being reduced by 1 season. So for re-signing players, it'll be 7 years. For free agents, it'll be 6 years. And this changes things a little bit in the equation, because those rules right now, I think there's some conflicting reports. There's been some good reporting done in Vancouver by Daniel Wagner and Thomas Drance, but from my understanding, which again is not confirmed as we don't know if the public has all the information, the new Memorandum of Understanding won't come into place till I think September 2026, and Hughes is eligible for a new contract in July 2026. So in that window, Hughes could theoretically sign an 8-year contract with the Canucks under the current rules. And if he gets to free agent eventually, he could only sign a 6-year contract. I mean, we're talking about a contract that's paying him like $14 or $15 million per season. That's a difference like $28 to $30 million over the course of the contract. That's quite a significant amount of money, obviously. That's maybe something that could offer the Canucks a large advantage if my understanding is correct, and that's the way that it ends up going.
What are your expectations for the Canucks this year? Are they going to be a playoff team? Are they going to be mediocre, rebuild? Like not rebuild, but you know what I mean. Basically, like where do they teeter?
I think they'll be on the lower end of the playoff teams if I had to guess. I mean, 2 years ago, again, they were the division champs first time, and I think it was 11 years or something like that. They won the division, obviously went on a very solid playoff run. A lot of things went well that year. A lot of players had career seasons. They got sky high PDO throughout the season. So I don't think they're going to be as good as that. Last year, they obviously missed the playoffs by a couple points, but, a lot of things went wrong. They had tons of injuries. They were constantly shuffling players throughout the lineup, and they had to make like a significant trade halfway through the season. This year, I think they probably land somewhere in the middle. I mean, I think probably that either that third spot in the Pacific Division or one of the two wild cards. The team looks very similar to last season. I mean, they made a couple new faces. Evander Kane, obviously, they traded for. It's probably like the biggest addition at this point. We'll see how that works out for them. But they have a couple of exciting young players, especially on defense, in Tom Willander, who should step into the lineup, Victor Mancini, who might start in the AHL or NHL, and Elias Pettersson, the defenseman, who will likely start in the NHL. I think those three players have really impressed me so far, and it's those kind of guys taking steps forward in their development that can help this team get better. So I think we do see an improvement over last year, probably finishing in those bubble playoff spots.
All right, last question. Let's just humor me. If Quinn were to be dealt, do you see him exclusively going to the Devils? Do you think this is just inevitable? Because Jim also said, if it was possible, he would try to get Jack and Luke to join Quinn in Vancouver. But unless Tom Fitzgerald is out of his mind or something like that, there will be pitchforks. There will be a riot outside the Prudential Center if he trades not just one, but both Hughes brothers. So I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's easier to get Quinn to New Jersey than it is to get Jack and Luke to Vancouver. So again, I'm not saying this is your opinion. Just humor me. Do you think this sort of ordeal is inevitable? Do you think it's just perpetuating prophecy, if you would?
I mean, if I were a betting man in Quinn's not returning the Canucks, it'd be easily the Devils as the runaway gambling favorite. I think it's hard to picture. I mean, it's not hard to picture, but it's easy to picture Quinn going to the Devils with his two brothers already being there. I think it makes a lot of sense in some ways. So yeah, if Quinn does end up leaving Vancouver, then I think it's likely to go to the Devils. Again, it's just a personal opinion, but just with the way that everything seems to be going, I could see that happening over any other team.
Well, Noah, we talked all things Devils, Canucks, mainly Quinn Hughes. Thank you for taking the time to do this. Where can my audience find you at?
People can follow me on Twitter at @NoahStrang_ or follow my Substack, where you can find the link in my Twitter bio. So, yeah. Or X now, sorry, I should say. I guess, yeah.
No,
it's still, yeah.
But thank you for taking the time to do this. And like I do to close out every episode, continue to stay safe. Have a wonderful day, New Jersey. Go Devils. I will catch you guys in the next episode. Special thanks to my guest star, Noah. Thanks for listening once again, and enjoy the rest of your day, everybody.